What happens to you, Matt Karma? Now you only speak to people who believe in God just because you think you found something. I used to love listening to you. Now you sound like another one of those fanatical nuts. Sigh. And I read that, I'm like, yeah, I do sound like one of those fanatical nuts.
Like all the disciples, they had to face this where they are sharing like Jesus is the way, and they got stoned, they got their heads cut off, they got so much they got so much pushback.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our podcast. And on this podcast here, we're going to just get raw and real about a lot of the fears that has been showing up in our life, on our walk with God.
Yes. Yeah, we want to talk about how you may have already noticed, but we changed the name of our podcast to God Led. Led by God.
As you can see, it's still
what
very
is
new.
It called? Yeah, and like, why did we change that, and what are our struggles coming up as we are being led by God? Because it is such an ego death. It's such a drastic change in our lives that we both like looked at each other this morning, being like, who are we?
Yes.
What's happening?
Yeah, even yesterday, because we had a similar thing that was showing up for us. Well, what was showing up for you this morning, but what was showing up for me last night.
Yeah.
I was watching a video from me just sharing this TikTok video, and I was just quoting a Bible verse. And as I was watching it, I just felt heavy in my stomach. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, who is this man? This is so different compared to what I've spoke about in the past, and especially with me being so against anyone who believes in God because of, if you haven't watched the testimony, watch that for more context, but just being so against anything like that. I remember just judging people like this crazy Christian, just talking about God and Jesus, and I look at my video, I'm like, have I turned into what I have been judging? And
Totally.
Have you experienced that?
Yes, I used to think people were Jesus freaks.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you guys talking about? What are you doing? Stop it.
Yes.
And now I'm like, I love Jesus. It's all I want to talk about. Oh, I'm like with my friends, they're like, what's new with you? I'm like, well, I love Jesus, and here's the Bible verse I read this morning.
Yeah.
And yeah, what was coming up for me this morning that I shared with Max, I was like, oh, I just feel like so heavy. I just woke up and I was like, oh. And what I can kind of boil it down to is just this feeling of like, wow, my old life is really dying. Like it's dead, actually. Like it's gone. Like the person I used to be is gone, actually. And that sounds so dramatic, maybe if you've not experienced it. And of course, I'm still the same person. Like I'm still Kelly, but like so many of my beliefs and thoughts and ways I saw the world are gone.
Yes.
And it's like abrupt. It feels very abrupt to me too, where I'm just like, whoa, okay. I really have to let that go. Like I'm being asked, and it's clear to like surrender and like kind of sacrifice a lot of things, and it's not easy to do.
Yeah. So I'd love to know, what are some of the biggest fears? Because if you're listening, if you're watching this right now, and either if you're like us, like the way that I was describing it is, I feel like I'm in kindergarten learning about God. And if you feel like you're trying to make these changes in your life, but then maybe you're feeling held back because of judgment of what other people are going to think of you, then I think it'd be helpful to really hear that we're in the same boat. Like we've been having so many fears come up for us, so many challenges come up for us, and so many people, I'll speak for myself, just reaching out on social media saying, I'm unfollowing you. I'll read out some of the comments. But I'm curious to hear, what are some of the biggest fears that have been showing up for you? Tell us all.
Okay, so one of the big fears has been around our business. You know, like in this death and rebirth, looking at parts of our business and seeing, oh, this is not in alignment with what I believe anymore. And just the overwhelming sense of how much do we really have to change, and what is that going to take? We just recorded this entire program, like blood, sweat, and tears into that program, and now I'm like, do we have to fully change it?
Yes.
And that's really confronting. That's a big fear. And then as we're stepping into God, talking about God, I'm like, I feel kind of like a fraud, because I do want to talk about this. It feels necessary to talk about this. And then I don't know everything. There's a lot I don't know, a lot we don't know, like you said, in kindergarten. And I'm like, okay, is it too soon? But I know it's not, because we share about our lives, and that's,
Yes.
so I don't want to stop doing that. So yeah, it's just like a little jumbled, but that's some of my fears about business. There's other,
Yeah, and I was sharing
yeah.
with Kelly that this morning I felt the same way. I'm like, am I qualified to be speaking about this when I feel like I am in kindergarten? Like, who's going to want to learn from anyone in kindergarten? And then I love I love this quote where it says that God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the called. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we look at the disciples that Jesus chose, and he didn't. I'm sure there was so many people more quote unquote qualified who knew about God and all these different things, but he's like tax collector, you, and then fisherman, you, and these, and yeah, what I got reminded about is that there is something that has been tapping me on the shoulder to say, speak about this, which is why we're going to change this to led by God, right? The podcast, and at times it doesn't make sense about do this. They're like, why? Well, it doesn't make any logical sense. Like, who are we to be speaking about this? But there is something, God saying, do it. Speak about it. Make this video. Yesterday, was it yesterday? Yesterday. So just to let you in, I used to have so much judgment to people, and to be completely honest, it still shows up now. Like when someone says, God told me this, and I'm like, I don't understand that. Like, what do you mean God told you this? Are you hearing voices in your mind? Like, what's going on? Is it your own thought? But how do you know if it's your thought or God's thought? So I still don't know the answer to that. But what I will share is that yesterday I had this thought. Is it God? I don't know. But I had this thought, like, make a video about this. And I was sharing with Kelly. It's like, I had to make it, right? It's like I had plans that I wanted to do for my Sunday. And I was like, I have to make this. I have to do it. And I had so much fear. I made the video, and it was all about, what was the title?
Surrendering to God.
Surrendering to God. It was some type of video about that. And the title was God can't bring you your husband until you do this. And I just made the video. And I posted it on my TikTok and on my Instagram, and I didn't want to. Here's the thing, like being led by God. I just want to read something for you, because there is this Bible verse that I quoted that I also did in that moment. It said, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. So what I got from that, right, my own understanding is, hey, if I post this, people are going to unfollow, which people did. People are going to get mad because it's such a drastic change to what I posted on my TikTok and on my Instagram. People did comment that. And what I did get from that, from trusting God, was just this, how do I word this? When I went on TikTok this morning, that video like blew up, and I haven't had a video get a lot of comments and a lot of people engaging with it in such a long time. And to me, that was like, if I didn't trust, if I was trying to just follow my own will, this wouldn't have happened. And I got this message from this girl this morning just saying how much it touched her, and also I'm just kind of speaking out loud here, but also what I realized for myself, and this is something I want to be careful of, is remembering that I am the messenger, not the message. Because I was like, yeah, I'm so good. Look how awesome I am. And like checking all these different followers, I'm like, wow. And I'm in the practice of remembering that this isn't about me. So yeah, I'll read some of the comments, because if I'm being raw and honest about some of my fears are, one, what are friends going to think? Are they going to think what I used to think of other people, which is crazy Christians, Jesus freaks, what are you doing? Like, just thinking that you're absolutely insane, right? And I'm like, thinking that that's how they're going to think about me, which they probably will.
I think they do already.
Yeah, they already do.
Some of them have told me.
Yes. Oh yeah, they did say that, right? Where is it?
Not all of them. There's been a couple.
But I had this one person on my story saying unfollowed, which is interesting why they like have to announce that. And then another comment said, "What happens to you, Matt Karma? Now you only speak to people who believe in God just because you think you found something. I used to love listening to you. Now you sound like another one of those fanatical nuts." Sigh. And I read that. I'm like, yeah, I do sound like one of those fanatical nuts. I get it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel anything. I'm like, I totally get it. I do sound like that. And at the same time, which is why it's so challenging to be led by God, because we have to what is that? What is that verse that we said today? You must give up your own way, take up your cross daily and follow me. That's literally what we're doing.
Yeah. I definitely keep coming back to the Bible and just seeing where, like, all the disciples, they had to face this, where they are sharing, like, Jesus is the way, and they got stoned, they got their heads cut off, they got so
Skinned.
much, yeah, skin, they got so much pushback. And this is the hardest part, I think, about being Christian or really following Jesus, is actually, it's talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think we can see it in the Bible again and again. And I feel like the Bible is like, basically like when you come to Christ, like you are crucified with Christ. Like your old life does die. And yeah. So anyways, I loved all that you said. I love that yeah.
Yeah. What are some other fears that you have?
Yeah, a big one is around friends and just the change in perspective that I've had. And it's interesting to look back because even since recording our testimony video, I feel like my testimony gets more and more clear every day, where I'm like, oh, I'm just seeing more and more. Like, I'm just seeing how God's been convicting me. And what I mean by convicting is just making things clear for me more and more over the last year and even 2 years. Like, there has been this part, and maybe in ways always, just questioning, like, I've never been that hardcore into like astrology or human design, and I've always been, like sometimes into it, sometimes not. But like I can think of like play parties and other what else? I don't know. Even like swearing. There's been certain things where I've been like, oh, that feels a little off for some reason, and I can just see little ways that God's just been like kind of convicting me and showing me the way until like it really came to light over like the last few months.
Yeah.
But my point with that is I'm very surrounded by a community of people who believe the New Age and who believe, yeah, New Age spirituality, which is full of astrology, human design, yoga, meditation, and basically the belief that all roads lead to God. Everything's good, all roads lead to God. And so it's really drastic now sitting around my friends who I love so much and just seeing how different my beliefs are now, right? Like it's like, whoa, like full 180. And it's hard to be with because part of me just wishes that they saw things the way I do. And part of me feels afraid of how our relationships might change, and ultimately actually just like afraid of their judgment and me like kind of wanting to have a opposing opinion but feeling really scared because I don't like conflict. I am so scared of conflict. And so that's a big piece of just not really knowing how to share about this in a way that in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have another question, and I'm going to check the camera, but keep going. So I have a question, which
Yeah.
is, what has been one of the most challenging changes that you've recently made?
Well, I would just say it does come back to the friend piece, and just there's been a couple times over the last week or so that I've been having lunch with friends, and it's just come up, this thing of this piece of Christianity that people don't like about how it's so black and white and how it's so intense. It's like follow Jesus, he's the way, or not, and everything else is like not God, basically. And my friends bringing that up and just saying like, yeah, but like, do you really believe that? And me just being like, I do.
Yeah.
And that's so scary. Like I just feel my fears come up inside of that, and like when I brought it up with talking with my friend, like I was like, oh my gosh, my face is just getting hot. I'm like so anxious about the conflict that this might cause, but like I do believe that this is that it is black and white. Like God is black and white, and there's one path actually, and it's a narrow path to God. And the other thing that I'll share The other belief that's drastically shifted for me is just around in the new age, like in new age beliefs, people believe that a lot of false beliefs about Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, and I used to too, around how they all practiced tantra and how how Mary Magdalene and Jesus were in a relationship and how they did sex magic and how they were basically doing all these new age beliefs. And there's some books that are supposedly channeled by like Mary Magdalene, and I think that there's this big fear that there's like this big belief that, you know, women are not honored in the Bible. And I used to believe that too. And I think it can be a big fear for women. And so then like these books come in and they say, oh yeah, like Mary Magdalene as a teacher was left out of the Bible. And it's because people were so like they hated women back then. So actually Mary Magdalene was teaching with Jesus and they had a baby and they were having sex and all this stuff. And I used to believe that. And so now every time that Jesus and Mary Magdalene get brought up, people think I'm talking about that version, which now I just see is so much deception. Like that is not true. And there's no historical evidence backing that. And I think that is actually like dark spirits that try and take the name of Jesus because it's so powerful. Yeah, that one's been hard. Those have been scary. Those have been scary conversations to have, and I'm still learning how to have them, like in a loving and also clear way. Another thing that I've been really getting so much clarity on recently is how much I want to dress more modestly.
Oh, I haven't heard this. Keep going.
No, have you not? Have you not?
No.
Okay. So basically, it's interesting because this happened once before when I talked about it in the testimony, but Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. I could see where I was just like dressing sexy to get attention. And so I started dressing slightly more modestly, but it was like it was in my head more than now with this new experience and relationship with Jesus. I like feel it so much in my heart. I'm just like, oh wow, I really wanna. I'm so excited to dress modestly. And it's really hard to get dressed. Like even for preparing for this podcast, I'm like, okay, like I wish I was wearing something like more modest, but it's like what I have and working with what I have, and I don't want to spend a lot of money right now, or like I'm working on being more, you know, stewarding my money better. Anyways, my point with this is what I see, modesty just now feels like so respectful to myself and so loving and so cozy in a way. And I just have no desire to show skin or be sexy in the ways that I used to. And even looking at like our old photo shoot photos and I have this dress on with like the highest slit you could possibly have. I'm like, I need all new photos for our business. I need new clothes because I just want to glorify God in what I wear. And I've heard people say, you know, if you were going to see Jesus today, would you be proud of what you're wearing? And it was similar to what you said about your room, like wanting to clean your room. Yeah.
Like I said that if Jesus walked into my room right now, I would be ashamed to be like, oh, I need to start cleaning up more.
Right. And now I feel similarly. I'm like, oh wait, I'm like embarrassed that I look so naked, actually. And that's not to cast shame on anybody or judgment, because it's so hard to have someone understand from the outside looking in, right? Like that's why from the outside looking in, like it looks like we're crazy and fanatical because it's like, what are you talking about? And it looks like we're just following all these rules, and maybe I feel ashamed and I think I should cover up, but that's not it. It's just that I just have the experience of like Jesus showing me and changing my heart and changing my desires. It's a crazy experience where I'm like, I don't want to dress that way.
Yeah.
It's not from shame. It's not from judgment on anyone else. It's just from desire and clarity of like what's actually glorifying God and what's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another thing is, if you see me getting up, if you're watching on the YouTube video, it's just because this camera that we're shooting on sometimes goes off. But if you're listening on the podcast, one of the things that I actually haven't told you. So one of the things that in terms of like just giving things up to God and just being led by God is something that I've been struggling with recently. And if you don't follow us anywhere else, like I tore multiple ligaments in my knee. And what happened is I just realized that how much I was turning to food as a way to numb myself or just deal with a lot of the mental and emotional pain. And I was recently on one of the men's calls that I'm a part of, and I actually just cried, and I just shared that I just haven't been feeling great in my body. And I look back at photos, and I'm like, wow, I've been gaining weight, and I've just realized like how much I've been trying to control my my food, right? Trying to control my patterns around eating. And I said to Kelly recently, like how I just gave it up to God. I'm like, I am sick and tired of trying to control this. Like, I've been trying 75 hard, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go inside, I'm gonna do this. And every single time I will just go back into old patterns and of just eating just not great. And when you were gone on Sunday, I actually went to a eating addict anonymous. The 12 steps for that.
Oh, OA?
Is that what it's called?
Overeaters Anonymous.
Overeaters Anonymous. Yeah. I can't remember the name, but that must have been it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just really helpful to just listen in and be like, wow, okay, yeah, I'm giving it up to God. So that's what's been happening with us.